Hello everybody and welcome back to another edition of the NEC Men's Basketball On The Run podcast. I'm Ron Ratner, Senior Associate Commissioner here at the NEC, and I'm joined by Ryan Peters, who is a contributor to the NEC Overtime blog and a longtime NEC blogger. Thanks for joining us again in studio.
It's always good to be here.
All right, so it's league play. Last time we saw you was at the end of the non-conference season. We've gone through 2 weeks of league play and already no unbeatens. Last team, Robert Morris, went down on Saturday. What's the case, your case, for parity this year?
Well, it's right there. You have 8 teams that are either 3-1 or 2-2 in league play. You can make a case for 9 teams as to why, if things go right for them, as to why they'll finish in the upper echelon in the league. You look at the parity. Home teams are only 11-9 so far in league play, but the teams that are on top, Wagner, Sacred Heart, Robert Morris, they're actually 7-1 in their friendly confines. They're taking care of business at home, and when you can do that, you put yourself in a position to compete for the NEC championship.
Okay, Ryan, then let's look at the 3 teams who are on top right now. We have Sacred Heart, Wagner, Robert Morris. Let's play a little word association. I give you a team, you tell me what comes right off the top of your head.
Sure, let's do it.
Let's go, Robert Morris.
Grittiness. I mean, they've won a lot of close games so far this year. That game at St. Francis Brooklyn, they had, I think, 16 offensive rebounds. They just found a way with Mendy and Petaway to attack the glass. John Williams had a great driving layup late in that game. They just found a way to win that game. Mount St. Mary's, offensively, they were struggling. It was kind of a slog. And then Josh Williams finds a way to get to the rim and score. They're 3-1 at this point. They haven't played their best basketball, but they've found a way to win. So definitely gritty.
You just have to have more points than the other team. That's their slogan, grit. You see it on all the stuff that they put out there. What about Sacred Heart? Your alma mater.
Balance. This is the most balanced team I've seen since their NEC, their rise in the NEC back in 2006, 7, and 8. They just have so many different players that complement each other. They lead the league in scoring, 82 points a game. They lead the league in assists. They're second in rebounding margin thanks to Anasicki and Spellman. And also Kenan LaRose is playing a really good role as a stretch 4. He's a good offensive rebounder. They're third in blocks thanks to Spellman. They do a lot of things really well.
Balance not only in how many players, but in how they can play. They can beat you inside, they can beat you outside.
Yep. They have 8-9 guys that Anthony Latina can rotate into that rotation. Does a really good job. They're one of the deepest teams in the league right now, and I don't think anyone said that back in November.
All right, let's go to Wagner. I think I know what your answer is going to be for this one. Seahawks, what is it?
They're just physical, physicality. They just out-muscle everyone. I mean, they lead the NEC right now in rebounding margin at an insane number, plus 8.1 rebounds per game. Defensively, they're just, pressure defense in your face. They just beat up the other team, and that wears over the course of the game on the opponents.
Ryan, we talk about Wagner and their physicality. One of those players that is truly physical, especially at his position, is Ramon Saunders. What a season he's had to date so far.
Ridiculously versatile. He can make, you tweeted about this, he can make long-range jumpers with a high degree of difficulty. He'll back down smaller defenders as he did against St. Francis Brooklyn. And he'll run and generate baskets in transition. He had a 6-assist effort against St. Francis Brooklyn. He's dishing, he's helping his teammates out. He can do it all. He's the latest example of a player who started his career with Bashir Mason and ended his career as a complete player like we saw with JoJo Cooper last year.
Yeah, Ramon has been outstanding. How about another player who, with unlimited potential, and he's been bringing it over conference play so far, Tyler Cole, Central Connecticut.
Tyler Cole, a triple-double machine in a way. My favorite thing with Tyler Cole, you look at him, he's second in league in assist rate, and usually, that's pretty much when your possession ends with an assist. Usually you're going to see true point guards be at the top of that category, guys like Cam Parker, Damian Chong-Kui, John Williams, Jay Sean Augusto, but Cole is number 2 on that list among NEC players, but not only does he do that, he assists the ball really well. He also has 13 games double-digit scoring, and he has 10 games where he grabbed at least 6 rebounds, and he has 7 games where he's had 2 or more steals. So he's just a stat stuffer in every respect. He does whatever the team needs him to do to win, and we saw that this week against FDU in Mount St. Mary's on the road.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Central Connecticut and their games. But you're right, though, when you look at Saunders and Cole, you have them both ranking among league leaders in points, rebounds, and assists. You take those two, you take your Keith Braxton types, and the league is just, you have these well-rounded players, and it's fun watching them.
Yeah, tremendous. When you could affect the game in a number of different facets, you're going to become a star in this league, and that's what we're seeing with Saunders, Cole, and also Keith Braxton.
Okay, Ryan, we've talked about Central Connecticut. Let's go back to New Britain for this week's Twitter Timeout, featuring Donyell Marshall, head coach, former UConn star. After the 0-2 start, trying to get him going, got out on the court, practiced with him last week. He wrote, trying to put a little spark into the Central men's basketball team, so I practiced with the team today. Nice little assist to Harrison K, hashtag whatever it takes. Subsequent tweets, you saw him hit a corner jumper, make a nice swing pass. What's your take on Donyell Marshall putting the sneakers on there and getting out on the court?
Oh, that must be why Central Connecticut won their 2 games, right? But for me, it was a blast in the past. As a kid growing up in Connecticut, rooting for Donyell Marshall, Ray Allen, Tate George. It was fun to watch those tweets, but it's nice to see Donyell's trying to figure out any way to get his team going, and whatever you got to do, whatever it takes to get your team moving in the right direction. Clearly, it helped with the direction of the Central Connecticut Blue Devils this week.
Now it's time for our Under the Radar Player of the Week. We go to Mount St. Mary's, where they've had 4 different players who've won NEC Rookie of the Week honors. But our Under the Radar player is not one of them. Who is it?
Gotta go with Damian Chung-Kui, the freshman walk-on. I mean, he is just logging minutes. I believe he has the 2nd most minutes in league play behind Jalen Gibbs, averaging 13.5 points, 3.8 assists. He's got a 2.5 assist to turnover ratio. He's making his 3-point jumpers 41%. He's been a revelation for Dan Engelstad.
What a great story that is. And if you think and you kind of look into the crystal ball in the future of what can be at the Mount moving forward, it is a bright future.
Absolutely. Like you said, they have 4 freshmen who've already won Rookie of the Week, and Chung-Kui's not even part of that. If you could keep this core together for 2-3 years, it's going to be something special, built up once again in Emmitsburg.
We've heard about our Under the Radar player. Now we move to the Star Watch. To Brooklyn, St. Francis, Brooklyn. This guy's one of my favorites. I cannot get enough of watching him and his athleticism and his shooting range. Talk to me about Jaylen Jordan.
He's silky smooth. I don't think a lot of people realize he's top 5 in the league right now in scoring. He's scored 55 points in 4 league games. Like you said, shoot it from 3. He leads the league right now, 44% on his triples. But he's just not settling for long-range bombs. He's attacking off the bounce. He's gotten to the free throw line at a good clip in these league games. When he plays well, the Terriers do well. When he has a Ken Pom offensive rating of 100 in a game, they're 8-2 this year.
Those step backs.
He's a really good player. He's got a great future in the NEC.
Ryan, now it's time for our Plays of the Week. First, we are in Brooklyn at the Pope Center. Time winding down. St. Francis, Brooklyn, St. Francis U. Tell us what happened.
Glenn Sanabria is such a luxury to have if you're Glenn Breka. Just let it run down the clock, 8 seconds go, and then there's Sanabria. He takes his defender off the dribble, uses his left hand, gets it just over the outstretched hand of Flag, the St. Francis University defender. Such a wonderful play late in the game, and obviously it was a game winner for the Terriers.
Sanabria's been clutch before. He'll continue to be clutch.
He's unafraid of the big moment. He proved that as a freshman on that great regular season team. St. Francis had a 23-win team, and he's proving it now as a senior.
Our second play of the week, this is one of my favorites of the year. We are at the Rothman Center, FDU Central, end of regulation. FDU down 3, needs a bucket, only a few seconds left to go. Here's how it all went down.
Bishop will inbound. Inbounds will go to Holloway.
Great
to Edge.
pass, great
Catch
pass.
the 3. Good! The bank! And we are headed to overtime!
No shocker that Darnell Edge hits that 3 there. Run us through this play, Ryan.
I think the underrated part of the play is the catch and pass. Mike Holloway was a wide receiver on that play. A lot of times when you see on these desperation heaves, the player waits for the ball to come to him, and by that time the defender is getting position, knock it away, tip it away, and game over. Holloway, he just ran right to the half court, jumped up in the air, got the ball, and had the wherewithal to find Edge and set him up for that great look in the end of regulation.
The Bryce Drew Valpo play never fails. It always works. If you throw it and the guy makes the catch like you said, you're going to get a shot at that because people forget about the runners on the wings. Edge got it. He fumbled it a little bit, got it back together, banked it in, tie game.
As long as you have a willing wide receiver who's going to make that catch, in that case, Greg Correnda had a couple options. He could have went with Mike Holloway. He could have went with Caleb Bishop as well, 6'8", athletic. He went with Holloway, and obviously that worked out really well.
Great play. Now, not only was that the play of the week, or one of the plays of the week, that came in by far the game of the week. That may be the game of the year. FDU Central double overtime thriller in Hackensack. All right, Ryan, so let's set the scene. Before we even get to Edge, how did this game go down that we got to the point where we needed a buzzer beater?
It certainly wasn't playing as a game of the week the way it was starting off. You know, Central gets off that big lead, obviously because Danielle was practicing with the team earlier. They're up 20 in the first half. FDU cuts it down, but then Central gets a little more separation in the second half. They're up 18, and then FDU just chips away until you get to the point where we just talked about the plays of the week.
So Edge sends it to overtime, but that's just the start of the drama in this game. Blue Devils take a lead again, 8 straight points from NEC Rookie of the Week, Ian Krishnan, but then back come the Knights. Culminates with a Jalil Jenkins to Elijah Williams dunk in transition with 27 seconds left. We're going into a second overtime. In that second overtime, who comes up big for the Blue Devils?
Tyler Cole and then Joe Hughley. You know, Hughley had 9 points, 3 rebounds in that second overtime. That's a lethal combo for Danielle Marshall. When you get Cole and Hughley going together, especially on the offensive end, that was clearly kind of the difference in that game where, you know, there was probably a lot of tired legs going into that second overtime.
10th triple-double in the last 20 years in the NEC. That's what Tyler Cole did. 27 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists. What a game, what a performance by Tyler Cole. That's one of the games of the year in the NEC. Now it's time for NEC Milestones. We have 2. First up, Sacred Hearts, Cam Parker. Boy, is he conjuring up visions of Jason Brickman and some of the great point guards that we have seen. So good at such a young age. Tell me what you see in Cameron Parker.
I mean, he's got a lot of hype, and rightfully so. He's just great floor vision, a great handle. He just, like I said before, he excels at getting his teammates involved. I think he's on a pace to break Jason Brickman's freshman record of 180 assists. Right now, Parker stands at 114. He just needs 4.5 assists per game over the next 14 regular season games to break that mark. I think he has a good shot at doing that.
He's 4th nationally. He's averaging 7.4 a game. He's a great chance to break that record. Now let's turn our attention to our friend Keith Braxton at SFU. While Cam Parker's racking up assists, Keith Braxton is racking up rebounds.
Yeah, if you look at defensive rebounding percentage, where basically it's the rebounds that you grab off an opponent's miss. Right now, Keith Braxton is 6th in the country in defensive rebounding rate at 30%. He's 11th in the country in total rebounds per game, 10.5. He's actually on pace. I don't think I'd ever thought I would say this. He's on pace to break Jalen Cannon's total rebounding record in league history. I don't think you foresaw that.
Ryan, it just shows you what effort you need to put into rebounding. He's 6'5". He's listed at 6'5". I don't know if he is 6'5".
It's a little generous.
It's a little, but it's amazing. And you're right. You wouldn't think of him as someone that would break Jalen Cannon's record. Who's, you know, when you thought of Jalen Cannon, you thought as a post player, interior player. But since Braxton is such an inside-outside player, it really is amazing what he's done.
It is. You look at the national leaders, individuals, NCAA in rebounding. Of the top 25, I mentioned that Braxton is 11th. He's the shortest guy in that group, in that top 25. There isn't a player besides Braxton that's shorter than 6'6".
It's amazing. And then when he gets his defensive rebounds, he's that one-man fast break. It's unstoppable. So.
And he can dish it to opponents. He's, you know, Braxton's when you watch him play, you watch St. Francis play. He doesn't dominate the game, but at the end of the day, he has 16 points. He has 10 rebounds. He has 4 assists. He has 3 steals. And the rebounding here, he's compiling. He's just kind of doing it quietly. No one really realizes that he could break Jalen Cannon's record, but here we are, and you know, he has a couple more healthy seasons. He's going to do it.
That's game after game. We move on, Ryan, to our games to watch. Let's start with the rematch. Wagner and Sacred Heart. Tell us what happened last week, what you're expecting this week.
Well, Wagner got off to the early lead, and that was really the difference in the game because the rest of the way, Sacred Heart was just trying to chip away, but they could never really get it to a point where they were within one possession of kind of tying it and taking the lead. This week, Anthony Lattinez definitely has to focus on getting off to a quicker start. They obviously did that, Sacred Heart did against Bryant earlier last Saturday, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, you have Wagner's physicality against Sacred Heart's really good balanced offense. It'll be, basically kind of they're butting heads there in that respect. We'll see how it shakes out on that Martin Luther King Day.
And Sacred Heart, as you said, get out to a strong start. What they did against Bryant, who's been playing well, Bryant, for them to do that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Anthony Lattinez should probably take that box score from Bryant and frame it in his office. It was just a wonderful display of offensive basketball.
Our next game to watch also happens to be an ESPN3 broadcast on Martin Luther King Day. LIU Brooklyn, St. Francis Brooklyn, the neighborhood rivals going at it at the Steinberg Wellness Center. 12 o'clock women, then the men's game, 3 o'clock men. Always a great game. What do you expect out of that one?
It's going to be a fun one. St. Francis Brooklyn's kind of returning to the scene of the crime. LIU Brooklyn kind of blew their doors off in the NEC quarterfinals last year. Obviously, that led to Derek Kellogg's team going to the NCAA tournament. We already talked about Sanabria and Jordan and Chauncey Hawkins and Dinez Sellens playing a lot better as the 5. But Jayshon Augusto was playing really well for LIU Brooklyn. Raekwon Clark was a beast last week. 26.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, shooting 71% from the floor in LIU's 2 games last week. That's going to be an interesting matchup.
And just a reminder, this week's men's basketball schedule shifts from Thursday, Saturday to Saturday, Monday. 5 games on Martin Luther King Day, including the aforementioned LIU St. Francis Brooklyn ESPN3 game. As always, you can watch NEC basketball in HD, live, and for free on NEC Front Row. That's a wrap for this week's NEC On The Run podcast. I'm Ron Ratner. Ryan Peters, once again, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Hopefully I'll be here a few more times before the season ends.
We will see you next week for the next edition of NEC On The Run.